Great. Well, welcome back to the third session, at least, of the day of the West Texas A&M Band Camp, Band Director Workshops. Our guests for this presentation are Jordan Freeman and Terry McMillan of Nimitz Middle School in Odessa. Very excited to have them here. Just two really great teachers doing incredible work. So without any further ado, please welcome Jordan and Terry.
Thank y'all, and welcome to our clinic. It's titled Fundamentals, Routine, Culture, Consistency, Building Success. And so, just a little bit about me to start. I grew up in Amarillo, Texas, went to Amarillo High, came to WT, and got my bachelor's here, graduated in 2013, and then got my master's as well, graduated in 2015. And my first job was in Odessa at Nimitz as the assistant. So we were talking last night, and I told her, I said, I remember walking down the street in Odessa on band tour the last year we were in grad school, and my wife, she wasn't my wife at the time, we were talking about where we wanted to work, and we were like, well, one thing's for sure, we're not going to work in Odessa, Texas. So lo and behold, we are in Odessa at Nimitz, and so I started out as the assistant at Nimitz. I was the assistant for 1 year, took over as the head director my second year teaching, and I've been there ever since. I'm about to start year 7 at Nimitz, and so, yeah.
My name is Taryn McMillan. I grew up in Midland, Texas, graduated from Midland High School in 2010, came to WT to study oboe with Dr. Krause, and graduated with my music education degree in 2015. My first job was also in Odessa, but I was on the other side of town. I was at Crockett Middle School, and I was there for 1 year. And then went to Abel in Midland for a couple of years and found out Jordan was looking for an assistant, and I was like, well, hey, I'm interested. And so I've been at Nimitz for the past 3 years, going on 4 years, and just loving every second of it. So.
So the kind of the purpose of the clinic, we just want to share things that we do at Nimitz, ideas. I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of this is not our stuff. We are big believers in mentors, and if we have time at the end, I might talk a little bit about mentors, but we bring in Cindy Bullock a lot and Dr. Tevelite, and I told Taryn we could really make this a really short clinic and just say get a mentor and do what they tell you to do, and that's what we do at Nimitz. And so anyway, so to move on, we're going to talk, we talked and kind of planned, and these are the things that really stuck out to us about what we do at Nimitz. We really, really work on fundamentals. We do have a routine, and we've tried to build the culture, and we try to be consistent about it. And so,
so we have 4 non-negotiables with our beginners, those being tone, number 1, rhythm, articulation, and reading. And so I'll let Jordan talk to you about this one, but he heard something from Dr. Garner at a clinic.
My first year teaching, and this is kind of a no-brainer probably, but my first year teaching, we brought Dr. Garner out for Dr. Garner Saturdays at Nimitz, and I learned a lot during those clinics, just getting to sit and watch him for 6 hours. But one thing he said, it was just kind of hit me. He said, there's 4 things you need to make a good sound. You have to have a great embouchure, you have to have great air, lots of air, you have to have good equipment, and you have to have a good concept of sound. So you have to know what a good sound sounds like in order to sound good. And so that's the way we approach tone and embouchure and all those things. And so as far as beginners go, I think at Nimitz we really push air usage. Of course we're checking embouchures every day and hearing beginners down the road, but we really, I would rather my beginners overplay at the beginning than underplay. I want them, I want to say back off rather than I need more. And then one thing about good equipment, this is just the saxophone in me coming out. For mouthpieces and saxophone, I see a lot of different mouthpieces. The mouthpiece for saxophone makes a huge, huge difference. I see a lot of Phobes debut. I'm personally not a fan of those. It's really hard to get a sound out, and so a lot of kids that play on the Phobes debut, I hear really stuffy sounds. And so what we do at Nimitz is we use the Selmer S90 C-Star, and then another good mouthpiece that I recommend too is the Van Doren AL3. that's a good one. But
And just to real quick touch back on embouchures, I just kind of had this thought come to me, but this whole week, teaching oboe sectionals to the younger kids, literally the past 2 days, all I've really been working on is embouchure, and it's so important that that one thing gets set, and then you use the right air, and then everything else just kind of falls into place. But yeah, embouchures and vowel sounds are super important with tone. So then going on to number 2, rhythm. We use a book that Darcy Voigt-Williams wrote. It's called Teaching Rhythm Logically. Some of you may have already heard about it. If you haven't, check it out. It's a great book. So my first couple years teaching, the cool thing about that book is it has like a script in it. So if you're like, I don't know where to start or how to even teach this concept, which is kind of silly with quarter notes and stuff, but it's a script and you just read straight through it. And then by year 3, 4, 5, you don't even need it anymore. And the kids understand it. The way she explains it, it just makes so much sense. And then there's counting charts or rhythm charts in the back of that book that we use in our classes. So we also supplement with other rhythm charts. You may be familiar with the Rhythm Master book, the one that's in the back. And so we use that one usually when we get to start teaching compound time. Because there's a line, it's like measure 76 or 79, it starts in 3/4, and then the next line is the exact same thing, but it's in 3/8, and so it's really easy to transition teaching that foot tap and the pulse and how all that works. And then, yeah, we count every day. That is part of our framework or routine in our beginner class. And so we related a lot to the foot tap. We start out using down up with quarter notes, and then once we get to eighth notes, we start using the toe heel foot tap. And you want to talk about that?
yeah, so the toe heel foot tap, I'm sure you've heard Dr. Garner talk about it already in his clinic yesterday. It's just rocking your foot back and forth. One thing I like about it is it gives a solid definition of what the up is. I mean, when you're doing down up can be here, it could be here, and so we do the toe heel foot tap. It just gives them more of a solid foundation of just where that up is. And they struggle with it at first. And I was forced to do it when I got to WT. Mr. Lefevre made us do it in the lessons, toe heel foot tap and down press up. And I was rhythmically challenged when I got to WT. And I'm a testament to those things. The foot tap really saved my life rhythmically. So I recommend.
And I'll admit, when I got to Nimitz, that's the first time I had really been introduced to toe heel. And that first year I was there, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, I was always fine with just down up. Like, I don't see what the big deal is. But the past 2 years, I finally fully bought into it, and it makes a world of difference.
And down press up too, which we'll talk about later.
Mm-hmm. And then we use different counting methods. So, of course, we use the Eastman, 1-tay, 2-tay, that thing. But we also I learned this from Cindy Bullock, clap, tap, count. So they're clapping the rhythm that's on the page. Of course, they're tapping their foot, but they're counting the subdivision. So that's a really good one to use. Sometimes instead of using numbers and tays, we'll have them say their foot tap. So they'll say toe, 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 heel, toe. And that way they're really relating what their foot is. They understand why they're using their foot tap. It's meant to help them. It's a tool, and it's a different way of them understanding that concept.
And one thing on clapping too, I do like clapping. I've kind of done a little bit of both, not clapping and clapping, but the clapping, it adds a level of coordination for the kids that they're going to be doing with their instrument anyway. They're moving their fingers, they're tonguing, they're creating rhythm with those two things. And so just having that, I tell them that's the simulation of what they're doing on their instrument. And so we do count and clap as well.
And even you could relate that to articulation too, like what they're going to be doing with their tongue. And then when we were making this clinic, Jordan brought this one up, and I was like, oh yeah, that's great. But he has his classes count the rests to make sure that they're really understanding what's happening in every part of the measure. So
yeah, what I've found with counting is if you have them only count one way, most likely they're probably going to start memorizing that music. And so what I try to do is I try to have them count in multiple different ways. I don't want to count just one way during class. We might do it 1-tay, 2-tay one time, then we'll do the foot tap, and then I might have them count the rest. What that does is it really helps you assess, are they understanding the material, or are they just kind of memorizing and regurgitating what they know? And so,
and then we have a couple of counting games. You may be familiar with these. We do Don't Break the Chain, where each student will count one measure, and it may be 8 or 16 measures, and we just go down the row, and their goal is to be able to count it without anybody making a mistake or breaking the chain. And we like to pass out prizes and things like that during that time. And then the other one is Mess Up, Drop Out. You just start at 60 and then start speeding it up and see who the last counter is. We like to use that one a lot in our advanced band when, especially during region season, we're working on scales. And every Friday, we have a scale contest. And so they just run straight down their scale page, and then we bump up the tempo and do it again, and then we just wait to see who's the last player. So those are 2 really fun ways to reinforce those things. Moving on to articulation, we both decided that this is still something we're constantly working on. We don't have any magic secrets for articulation, but this is just kind of what we do. So we do make sure in those beginner classes we're doing a little bit every day. And you'll see in our routine, we have a section where we do I play, you play, and that's a lot of where we're having them do what we want them to do, and then we go down the row and check. Sometimes, like, I'm sure you've heard one taste bud on the tip of the reed or on the back of the teeth, and you get those kids that, like, they get it. And then you might get another kid that they're taking you literally, and they're trying to use one taste bud, and they're not making enough contact or tonguing too hard, so you have to do specific adjustments to some students.
mm-hmm.
But
And I will say on articulation, those first few years I didn't do a whole lot with articulation, and I think it was because it sounded bad when we did it, and so I didn't want to work on it. And it's kind of the same thing with your kids and practicing. We talk to the kids about don't practice the things you know, practice the things you don't know. But it's the same thing in your daily routine. If you'll just work on articulation, even though it sounds bad, if you'll just continue to do it a little bit every day, it'll get better.
And then there are examples of what vowel sound we use with each instrument. We like to use a D syllable instead of T, makes a softer articulation. And then we learned this from Dr. Tevelite, I guess was it last year or a couple years ago?
2 years ago.
Well, do you want to tell them you were working on
so
articulation?
in the advanced band, I was working on articulation. We were tonguing 16th notes and trying to make them more staccato. And when we got to the brass players, we were finding that there was no definition in the 16th notes. It just kind of sounded like la, 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 la. You could hear them trying to tongue, but it wasn't really working out. And so Dr. Tevelite was there when we were going down the row. And so there was a trumpet player who was struggling, and so he told him to say the instead of D, or D and the instead of D, and it was like an instant fix. And so what we found is a lot of our brass players, especially, maybe not for legato, but for like when you're trying to articulate fast 16th notes, having them tongue a little bit more down and forward on their teeth has helped us some. And so, actually, I shouldn't say some, quite a bit. And so we've started implementing that in our brass classes.
And then reading. So at the beginning of the school year with our beginners, we start with flashcards. And again, this is another thing we got from Darcy. But they get 8 flashcards. We show them how we want them to draw the staff, and they draw their clef. And then for each instrument, they have a specific range that we want them to learn. So we show them where they are on the staff. And their job is to go home and use those flashcards to learn those first 8 notes. And then we have a flashcard test that we do. And if they pass it, then they get to open their case on the day that we decide we're going to do that. And if they don't pass it, then they have to wait. And then, did you want to tell them about, like, the first time we did it, we had, like, maybe half the class pass and the other half class didn't. And we were like, well, we can't move on. Like, that's only half the class. And so what ended up happening was we just kept, like, wasting time trying to get these other kids to learn the cards. And when really, if we had just gone ahead and opened cases, then that other half of the class would have been more motivated to go ahead and learn their flashcards. But anyways, we do that. And then the second thing we do is Mad Minutes. It's a website. You can just Google Mad Minute Music. You can make a worksheet we do a full 60. So 60 notes. and they have 1 minute to, note name all of those notes. And we've actually talked about adjusting the way we do it a little bit at the beginning. So instead of doing a full octave on that Mad Minute, I think we're going to start with maybe 4 notes and really get those 4 notes ingrained in their head, and then kind of start growing from there on those Mad Minutes. But we even use them later in the year just to kind of as checkpoints. But those are really easy to pass out, 1 minute, and then you're done. Get to the book sooner than later.
Yeah.
I struggled with that really early.
It was the year that COVID hit, the first year, in that fall. I kind of figured out, like, we started in the book way sooner than we usually do, and I just made the kids start reading. I took like the last 15 minutes of class, and we have we'll go over it later, we have a routine we go through when we're learning a new line in the book. And so, but I just made them read the entire line. First year teacher, second year teacher, me. I was one of those people that was like, okay, let's clap and count 2 measures. All right, let's finger note name it. Now let's play it. All right, let's do the next 2 measures. And so really you're just teaching those kids how to practice, which is not bad, but you're not really holding them accountable. And so what we started doing that year is we would just read the line, and I would choose a kid while the class was clapping and counting it. I would choose a demonstrator, and they would play it, and then we'd finger note name it, and that same kid would play it. And for that first week or two, it was just kind of fragments of the line. And there would be some kids I'd call on that wouldn't play, any of the line. But as we progressed, and usually even the kids that don't play anything the first round, by the 4th time they do it, they can at least play a little bit of it. And so that really forced our kids to start reading and understanding, like, okay, I've got to do this. I can't just slowly work up. You just got to read. And so that's really helped our reading, was just making them read lines out of the book. And then the kids like demonstrating too.
So our goal is to do 4 to 8 lines a day, and so the past years we've been using the Essential Elements book, and this year we're going to try the Rhythm Master book. And the reason we're doing that is because we want them to read more of one concept, so that they're getting a lot of reading in, whereas the Essential Elements, you might have 2 or 3 lines of that concept, and then it's on to something new, and we just didn't feel like we were getting enough reading in. So we think we're going to try this book this year and see how that goes for us. And then we get into non-negotiables for advanced band.
And so our non-negotiables for advanced band, pretty similar as beginners: tone, rhythm, articulation, reading, and then we added technique for that second year. And so, I think it's great to push technique in beginner class as well. I'm going to be honest, not every year do I get to it in every single class, but definitely that second year we start pushing technique. And so, tone, just reinforcing concepts from the beginner year. When we come back from summer, like I said, I have them use a lot of air. I would rather them overplay than underplay. We talk about intonation. I teach them how to, tune their instrument. If they've forgotten over the summer, every kid has a tuner and a hookup. And we talk about tuning. We talk about ensemble matching and blending and those things. This year, one thing I talked to my kids about, we were rehearsing, and we talked about hearing versus listening. And I told them, I was like, everybody in the room's hearing everything that's going on, but are you actually listening? What the difference between hearing and listening is, listening, you're actually processing. Am I out of tune? Am I blending with my section? How do I sound in comparison with my section? How do I sound in comparison with the entire ensemble? And so we kind of harped on that a lot, hearing versus listening.
And we had Mac bib out this year, and that was one of the big things he kept reinforcing was listen and adjust. That's listening is comprehending what you're hearing, and then adjusting and fixing those problems. So.
Yeah. Rhythm, we count every day. I make my top band count just like I make my beginners count. Just as confident, just as loud. We count and clap. If they sometimes you get in 7th and 8th grade, they think they're too cool to count. It's just like 1, 2, 2. And so I make them count with a big, strong voice. I'm a big believer that your voice is, if you can do it strong with your voice, it's going to transfer to your instrument. If you do it puny with your voice, you're going to sound puny on your instrument. And so we make it a big deal to count super loud. And we do, as far as rhythm goes, one thing that we added this year, we do the duettinos, the Dr. Garner duettinos, and that has helped a ton. I'm a huge believer in those things. I'm going to show you a video. This is kind of like a duettino. This is the video of America. It's in 6/8 time. And so it starts off and they all play it together. And then what you're going to hear is it'll branch off into sections. And so they might have like a little, like 1 or 2 beats of the melody. And so, but with it all together, it should sound just like the theme. So this is the video, our video of America. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. So this is the split parts now. Okay, so not perfect, but the cool thing about that is you can have half the band play, you have girls play, you can have boys count, vice versa. You can do so many different things that just reinforces independent musicianship and reading. And so
I just posted a link online, but if you Google Garner Ensemble Project, there's some free duets, trios, duettinos, which is the pass-off, quartets, and he just did a whole second set, and it's on there, and I literally just have to link to it, so it should be up by tomorrow. So lots of, they're all free to print.
oh yeah, and they're great. Our kids' favorite this year we did In the Hall of the Mountain King, and it's what's cool about that one too is you can do it just 1 day 2 day 1 day 2, or you can do it in cut time. 1 ta 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 1 ta ta 1 ta ta, and so you can just the sky's the limit with those things. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of it. Articulation, we do I have an articulation page that I hand out. I use Melody Ann Malo's articulation page I got from Anthony Rivera, and that's a huge been a huge game changer for us. It teaches them all the styles. It's written out on the back side. It has like a word for word explanation of what each style is. But I remember when we were working on it, Dr. Tavlite came and I was trying to explain to the kids like what to do. I think we were working on long lifts, which is long lifts, which is kind of tricky to get those kids to do at first. But Dr. Tavlite said he actually played. He said, "Let me take care of it." And so he played. We always play a whole note first, and then the long lift quarter notes. But he went 1 da 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 da. And so he said those quarter notes should be the exact same as 3/16 notes, and which was huge help. I mean, it was like an instant fix. And so it reminded me of a thing he said, I think maybe back when I was in college. You can solve a problem in 10 seconds by playing it on your instrument versus what might take 5 minutes to explain with words. And so you save a lot of time just by having your instrument out and demonstrating on your instrument. And so I use my instrument a lot to demonstrate. We sight read every day. We use those duettinos, so sight reading. I don't think we have time to show this next video, but there's another video we did. Dr. Garner, I sent him some of those videos we did, and he sent us, he did a kind of a duettino as the carnival, based on the carnival in Venice. And so we actually learned it in a week. I was pretty surprised and impressed with those kids. It was like during STAR testing, so we were off for a week and then we learned it. So anyway, and then technique, I think region music really pushes technique. If you will make all region band a huge deal at your school, That's what we do. Region's a huge deal. I require all my top band students to participate in region band, and we have sectionals on the music every week. They have assignments. We have them.
Had several in our second band. Our concert band made all city and all region one year too.
Yeah, and so it's just kind of one of those things. It's like you're expected to do it, and so we have the kids. Well, I'll talk about that later. And then starting kind of later after region, we'll start in the Fussels book, and we'll work the Fussels book. If you're not familiar with that book, I suggest you check it out. Cindy Bullock told me to use it, and it's kind of like, reminds me a little bit of the TRI book, but it's just scale patterns, but the kids have to plug in the key signature. All right, and so everybody reads off the same page, and they just start on a different line, and you just work your way down. So that's a great thing to use too. Next thing is routine. So a couple years ago, we were in director's band at band camp, and Dr. Garner made a comment. He said, "Man, routine can be deadly," and that really kind of stuck with me. It's like, because I think about what I do as routine. But he's really right. When my first year teaching, after Cindy came out and observed me, she had told me I need to create like a routine for the class and everything. And so I'd made my routine, and we stuck to that routine, and I pounded that routine. And but I didn't change the material we were working on. And so I get to the end of the year, in my beginner percussion class, man, they could count the rhythm exercises book, the blue and green slide or whatever it is. They could count that up, down, back, forwards, front. But when I put a new piece of music in front of them with 16th notes, they couldn't do it. And so what that made me realize is like they weren't really reading the material; they were just memorizing and regurgitating. And so that's really kind of shaped the way I've tried to do things from then on. It's like it's more important to change the things, and maybe it doesn't sound perfect, but it's more important that they're seeing different things every day and actually reading.
Yeah. So. Our routine is listed there on your handout. You can see what we do every day with beginners. So our daily routine for beginners is entering the room. We use champs at our school, so we say voice level 0, which means they can't talk. They come in, get their stuff, and sit down. And so hopefully I give them about a minute after the bell, and then we turn the metronome on and we're off. So entering the room, we do our chants. So we have a posture chant and a key chant. And then we get into counting. We use those rhythm charts that we were talking about earlier, and our goal is to get through one chart a week so that by Christmas we can start doing compound time and flat toe, heel down, press up, all that stuff. And then we do I play, you play. So at the beginning of the year, this is a really good time to like flutes on their head joints and start introducing articulation. And then we get into fundamentals. We do lip slurs, long tones, octave slurs, all that stuff. And then
Every day.
Yeah, every day. This is what literally the routine we do every day. But like he said, we're changing the material at each of these points. You can almost think of this as a framework instead of a routine. And then we get into our scales. We have a page from Nimitz where the front side is tetrachords and the back side is scales. And that page has been a life changer with teaching beginner scales. That's my favorite thing in the world. But so we do tetrachords and 1 octave scales, and once we're done with that, we'll move on to 2 octave scales. And then by the end of the year, I'm passing out the all region scales, so they're ready for next year. And then at the end of the class, we're getting to our book, and we try to save about 10-15 minutes so we can read those 4 to 8 lines. When we're teaching a line out of the book, we have our 4 steps. So we count and clap, we finger note name, we finger tongue, and then we play it. And just like Jordan said earlier, he has one kid demonstrate for each of those 4. So they're playing, even though the rest of the class is still clapping and counting or finger note naming. And then each time that one student's getting better at reading.
And I used to pick a different kid for everyone. And the positive to that is you get to hear more kids. But what I found is if you just stick with that one student, they're going to, they might biff it the first time and the second time, but the third and fourth time it's going to be better. And so they're redeeming themselves every single time. They know that they get more than one chance, especially when it's, new stuff.
And one of the really cool things about this routine is like at some point in the year, the beginners know, like if I'm having a conversation with Jordan and I can't start class immediately, then I'll have a kid go up and turn on the metronome, and they can do those first few things by themselves. There's no reason that they can't start class once they hear that bell ring. So that's kind of a bragging right for those classes that can do that as well.
And really, should they, honestly, at some point, they should be able to run their own class. I know, like, there's been years where we've gone to TMEA where we had, like, a math teacher had to come and cover, and so I always go in and check with the teachers to make sure everything went well. And, you know, usually the response is like, oh, yeah, I didn't have to do anything. I just sat there and watched, and they just did their own thing. Like, they knew what to do. And so that's kind of a, yeah, that's, if you can get to that point, that's a good thing.
And one more thing about these frameworks. There was a time this past school year where Jordan was out for several weeks, and then this upcoming school year, I'm going to be out for several weeks because I'm having a baby. And so when we have to combine our beginner classes, we're still able to make progress because we have that same framework. The clarinets know that we do our chants, and then we count, and then we do our warm-ups and stuff like that. So it's really easy to plug trumpets and clarinets together. Or I think the only one that's a little weird is horns and percussion.
Yeah.
That one's kind of hard, but
Yeah.
everybody else, flutes and saxophones, you know, you can just plug them together and still have class and be productive.
So example of our daily routine for band, we, same way, entering the room is same 6th grade through 8th grade, and they don't talk, they get their stuff, they get to their seat. In the last couple of years, I've actually, my top band, I've started letting them warm up on their own. I know that's kind of differing opinion topic there, but I feel like that helps, and the kids, it takes a little bit of training at first. You might have to go tell a kid, hey, we're not playing that right now. You need to do this, 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 and this. Give them a list of things that they can work on. But I want them to warm up, and I want them to tune before we play our first note. And then I will give them a chance to retune after we warm up. But and then after that, we hum. This is something I got from Artie Henry. I went and observed Artie Henry a few years ago. They do a lot of singing at the beginning of their rehearsal, humming, they even do their articulation on pitch, and it sounds really good. And so that like stuck out to me, and so I was like, I want to do that. And we don't do it as extensively as they do, but I do find that singing, I turn the drone on, so we do concert F, and then I'll do a concert C for the horns and clarinets. And I turn the harmony director up way loud, and I want them singing with their biggest voice. And then as the year goes, I turn that volume knob down, and then usually by then everybody's singing with full big voices. And so we do concert F, F around the room, long tone 1A. We do our articulation exercise that we talked about. One thing that really changed, I got this from Anthony Rivera, we do color groups, and color groups are a great thing that help with matching and blending. And so our color groups, group 1 is tuba, bari, bass, clarinet. Color group 2 is euphonium, bassoon, tenor, sax. Color group 3 is saxophone, trombone. Color group 4 is clarinet and horn, and then color group 5 is flute, oboe, trumpet, and percussion. And so we talk to the kids, and these are where we want their ears for right now. And you know, honestly, that's where they have most of their parts too together. And so what's cool about the color groups is you can use them even if, like, okay, I want to hear color group 6, do long tone 1A, everybody else is going to echo that or whatever. And so it really gets them listening to the instruments they should be listening to. We do lip slurs, and I wrote out a down press up exercise my first year teaching. So we do this little down press up exercise.
Can you go ahead and show it?
Yeah, I'm not going to show the whole thing because it's kind of a little bit longer. So what it does, it just takes a 5-note scale, just a concert B flat scale, and they play an 8th note on the downbeat, and they do that up and down the scale. Then they play an 8th note on the second third of the beat, the toe, and they play it up and down the scale. And then they play it on the third third of the beat, up and down the scale. And then it just does a bunch of different rhythms, and it's easy. It gives them a chance to focus on what their foot's doing. The band this year got really good at it, and it wasn't challenging them, and I was like, okay, let's play it in a round. And so we did it in a round. We had group 1, group 2, group 3, and then I was like, okay, let's play it. Let's turn every 8th note into 2 16th notes. And so that's what this video is it's a round, and then they're playing 16th notes. E and go. single day. Maybe early on we do, but as it kind of gets better, we don't do it every day. We do scales, chromatic scale during region and solo and ensemble season. We'll do performers. So I have a big bucket. Sorry, I'm not a camera. I have a big bucket that I have all their names in, and so I'll draw their name. Early on in the year, we just do scales, and they have to stand up. They've got to face the whole band, and they play their scale. Once we get closer to our region, they have to play an etude. And so I want them to be performing in front of their peers. Another thing we do for all region is about a couple weeks before, I'll have them, they have to go get a paper signed. They have to perform for a teacher, and they have to perform for a principal, and then somebody else of their choosing. And so they have to go around and perform their etudes. And then we do duettinos, and we'll do concert music. I don't spend a lot of time on concert music, especially in the fall, just because I try to pick stuff that they should be all the stuff that we do, they should be able to read the stuff that I pick in the fall on that. So expectations, all supplies pertaining to their instrument, band binder, pencil, and tuner, and hookup. They need to bring those every day, and they're expected to have those.
Back to concert music, when we get to spring and we're preparing for UIL, we're still, have maybe like 15 minutes at the end of class to work on that music, but we're also working on it in sectionals, so those kids are getting plenty of time to work on that.
And then the last thing, culture. Culture is, or I guess it's not the last thing. Oh my goodness, we're running out of time. So changing the culture of a school is kind of a challenging thing to do. But I think that it starts with recruiting and retaining the correct students, recruiting the right students and retaining them. My first year as head director, I was so nervous to go recruit kids for some reason. I was just like really nervous. I talked to the other director across town, asked him what he did. And so I went and recruited and talked to the kids about the parties, the trips we took, all the, the social events we did. And I remember that next year, the group of students I got, I remember that first couple weeks in beginner class, a kid asked me, so when are we having a party? It's like, so I set that expectation for those kids. That was my fault, the way I recruited them. I set that expectation. That's what band was. And so I changed that the following year. I still mention that we go on trips. That's just not my focus. I talk about, I ask the kids how many raise their hand if they've been a part of like a winning team. And so, most kids at some point have been a part of something like awesome. And I asked them if it was a lot of hard work being a part of that. And they say, yeah. And I say, but it like matters, it's cool, right? And the answer is usually always yes. And so I tell them band is a lot of hard work, but we have a lot of fun doing it. And so, we really push, we're a winning team, we work hard, we have fun working hard, and we do get to do some social stuff too. And so, students will usually stick with something that they're good at. And so if I rarely lose kids that are really good players. It's always the kids that slip through the cracks that want to quit. So, and then.
Okay. I was gonna say, Jeff Whitaker has told me this, I think it was last year, but he said kids will stay in if they're good at what they do and they have a purpose.
Yep.
So.
Treating students fairly, that's pretty self-explanatory. I'm pretty humorous with it. I try to tell a lot of jokes at the beginning of the year. Another thing Jeff Whitaker told me my first year as head director, he said, if you can make them laugh, you got them for another 10 minutes. And so I try to insert a lot of humor in what I do. And if you have a good relationship with the kids off the podium, if you do have to get onto them on the podium, I feel like my kids understand. It's not personal. It's just I need them to get that stuff done. And so, it's not. I don't hold a grudge against the kids if something goes wrong in rehearsal. I treat them differently outside of class too. And so, private lessons, building private lessons. It's kind of in shambles right now, but we're going to work on rebuilding it. A couple years ago, it was really cool. We had so many private lesson teachers, we didn't have rooms to put them in. And so if you can get that going at your school, that's a huge game changer as far as private lessons go. And then push band camp. We start probably in September and October and start pushing band camp. And I talk to the kids first, and then the kids go home and tell their parents, and then I talk to the parents at Christmas concert, and then I continue talking to the kids about it, and I figure out which kids are really interested in going. If you have a kid who's like, my mom said no, but I really, really want to go, I'll usually call that parent and just talk to them. And sometimes it's no, but sometimes they're like, you know what, like that sounds really cool. And so taking that time to sit down and call parents and actually just have a conversation with them, that's been a huge game changer as far as getting kids to camp.
So the last time we had camp, we had like 30 something,
40,
kids,
yeah.
and then this year we have 50.
I think it's like 50 or something. So
Yeah, and it makes a huge difference for the next school year.
yeah, it has a huge kickstart to your year.
So we're gonna have to wrap up. You guys could tell yesterday, Dr. Garner is counting the seconds of rehearsal. So we cannot go past. I will say, as you're kind of getting your stuff together, first of all, give them a hand. So a lot of the people that have written articles for Band Directors Talk Shop do many of these same types of things. So I put like 8 links of stuff they talked about. The chants are on Band Directors Talk Shop. There's an article about how to teach compound time, down, press up. There's Dr. Garner's duetinos, duets, all that stuff. Trying to think, there were some other links I put on there. How to have your students run the class, how to teach your kids to run the class. So if you look online, they're on the website, or if you want to ask me if I think of it, I'll try to email out to some of you. But there really were a lot of things they talked about that you can find on the website too. So, and I'm sure they're happy to talk with you in the next few days of camps if you have more questions.
Find a mentor and do what they tell you to do.
There you go. All right, thank you. Online, I think everything is posted in the comments for you guys, so thanks for being here. If you haven't been watching any of the others, go watch them. They're going to be available for 48 hours from the time of the clinic. We will see you guys at 4:30 on the Band Directors Talk Shop Facebook page.